Hi, I'm Dennis Wilson. At Delta Dental of New Jersey, we're committed to educating the public about the importance of good oral health and its role in our overall health and well-being. That's why we're proud to support the important healthcare programming produced by the CAUCUS Educational Corporation and their partners in public television.
Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by Montclair State University, PSC&G, committed to improving New Jersey's economy and strengthening its communities. The New Jersey Education Association, Delta Dental of New Jersey. Everyone deserves a healthy smile. Choose New Jersey. Our mission is attracting companies to the Garden State. The New Jersey Re-Entry Corporation. And by the law firm of GIBBONS, PC. Promotional support provided by NJ Advance Media. And by Commerce Magazine.
This is One-on-One. I'm an equal American just like you are.
The jobs of tomorrow are not the jobs of yesterday.
Look at this. You got this?
Here it is, man. Look at that.
Life without dance is boring.
When you first heard that they were doing Charlie Rose and Gayle King, didn't you go, what?
Do you enjoy talking politics?
No.
People call me because they feel nobody's paying attention.
Our culture, I don't think, has ever been tested the way it's being tested right now.
Such a good question. High five.
One cannot speak truth to power if power has no use for truth.
Well, at least there ain't a Judas who sold out his whole country for a pile of silver!
I have been appointed spy hunter general. He must be captured alive.
To hell with Washington!
You're in the war now, Father. This is how it's done.
No survivors.
It's a powerful series. It is called Turn, Washington Spies on the AMC. And by the way, you're just seeing Ian Kahn in there. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Tell us about that series.
This is a show.
You play George Washington.
I do. I played General George Washington as a younger man during the during the American Revolution. He was sort of a man of my age and sort of his early to mid 40s. And it's really a show not just about General Washington, but also certainly about the Culper Spy Ring, which was a group of young people in their 20s who had found their way to becoming spies for George Washington during the Revolutionary War, because it was really like sort of the Americans were sort of like a AAA ball club versus the New York Yankees at their height, right, which is the British Army. So the chance of General Washington and the Continental Army winning this war were extremely small. So he had to use guerrilla tactics and spies to really have a chance in this war, and he did. And it's really a show about that, as well as Benedict Arnold. It's really the story of how Benedict Arnold went from being this great general and this revered hero in this country to somebody who we now look at as the greatest traitor that ever lived.
Most surprising piece of what you learned about George Washington is that
he's actually not the grumpy old man that I think all of us think of him as. He was really a charismatic leader. He was someone who was able to get his men to get behind him during this Revolutionary War and this incredible fight, and then later on became the leader of a country that really didn't have any bearings at all, and with his guidance and his strength and his presence really led us.
Leading into this role, you have had a range of experiences as a performer, as an actor, in such works of art as?
In the TV world,
that's a setup. Come on.
Sorry, man. I missed it.
Did you not date Carrie?
Yes, I did.
In Sex and the City? You did?
Yes, I did.
For how long?
I had this one particular episode. It became somewhat of a famous episode, it turns out. And I didn't even know when I shot it, because it was right before the show became Sex and the City. It was the beginning of season 2. I just knew that when I was growing up, I thought that she was really cute on Square Pegs. So I was like, hey, I get to kiss on.
This is great.
Yeah, it was really great. And it ended up being, I was a kid, man. I was like 24 years old. And I was playing this great character of Ben. And now my older son, I have 2 boys, is named Ben.
That's awesome. Yeah. You're in Homeland?
Yeah, doing
Billions?
Billions, that's right.
One of my favorite shows, Billions.
Yeah, it's a good show. Great show, great actors, and great to be a part of, yeah.
Let's do this. While people, by the way, find out more about Ian playing Washington on AMC in this terrific series. But there's another connection you have. Because you just said to me before we got on the air, you said, and we'll go back to talking about your acting in just a minute, but you said, I'm going to use whatever visibility I have, whatever fame I have, to make a difference when it comes to important end-of-life issues. You came to us through our friends at Villa Marie Claire.
That's right. So my mother-in-law, who was actually in the same industry that I'm in, she was a very famous casting director. Her name was Joan D'Incheco. She was the casting director.
Joan D'Incheco.
Joan D'Incheco. And my wife was...
Picture right there.
There she is.
That's right.
And my wife grew up in Bergen County here in River Edge, New Jersey, and her mom, Joan, was one of the best casting directors of the 20th century. She cast Car 54, Where Are You?, The Patty Duke Show.
Susan Lucci?
And yes, and she was the casting director for All My Children for 30 years and discovered Susan Lucci, Kelly Ripa, a world of people, including Bill Timoney, whose wife...
That's right.
That's right, whose
Georgette.
wife works here. Yeah.
And at the end of her life.
So, the end of her life, she lived a very long, happy life. And then when she reached 89, really at the end of November this past year, we got a phone call like to midnight on a Sunday from her saying, I've had a heart attack and I'm going to the hospital. And we're like, oh my God. So we got in the car. And over the course of the next, she passed 3 weeks later. But what ended up happening was about a week and a half in, we had a wonderful doctor who had expressed to me personally, young guy, and he said, look, your mother-in-law's got 10 days to live, and there's really nothing more that can be done for her here. And so over the course of that time, we began discussing what our different options were. And one of the people who worked at the hospital said there's this amazing place called the Villa Marie Claire. Now, my instant reaction to that was, it's a hospice. It's not, that means giving up, really. It means that we're just letting her die. We should be in some way fighting for her life. But the doctor's like, no, man, there's nothing to be done. Now it's about finding a place where she can spend her last days with joy and with life. And what this place ended up being was a place not just for her to pass. I think of it like the best airport in the world. It's a place where she was able to sort of take off into the sky, but it was also a place where the family could come to terms with what it is and sort of land their own plane and their own experience of the pain. And there's this guy named Charlie Violati, who's a doctor.
Yeah, Charlie's great.
Charlie,
part of the Holy Name
part of Holy
family.
Name,
Right.
part of the Holy Name family. And Charlie, whose wife had passed in unfortunate circumstances, has dedicated his entire life. This is one of the best cancer doctors in the country, and he's dedicated his entire life to helping people on a daily basis. And he literally, legitimately changes people's lives. And Mike Marin, who's the CEO of Holy Name Hospital, has made this an absolute priority, because people, when they have the chance, it's not just the people who get to pass in this 36-acre palatial estate where you really literally don't have to pay for it largely if you can't afford it, or if you can afford it, it's a tenth of the price of a hospital. But Mike is really helping to change the conversation about the end of life, because we all are going to come to that place.
Sorry for interrupting. What did they do for you and your wife, this experience?
Well, like I said, it was like a place to come to terms with the passing, where you knew she wasn't going to be in any pain at all, and she was going to be cared for and loved. The different experiences, and there's no disrespect to the medical community at all, but it's just a different job when you get to this point in life. It's not about, we couldn't save her. We couldn't, I had one doctor who said there's a 1 in 1,000 chance that if I do this surgery and open her up, that she might live for another 3 weeks. I'm like, why? No, there's nothing positive to that.
Yeah.
So it sounds almost dour and it sounds almost sad, but it's not. It's amazing. It's inspiring. These are beautiful people. As I said to you right before we went on, whatever visibility that I have, the people here in New Jersey, New York, anywhere around are fortunate to have a place like this. We just need people to know about it so they can have that experience.
Well said. Let me ask you this in the time we have left. There are a whole bunch of folks that, we just had a young woman, Wade McDonald, on, right? I think she's also from the Bergen County area. Was on The Voice, season 11, really talented young woman. I asked her this question, a bit younger than you. When someone's like that young, they're younger than everybody.
Yeah.
But how about this? I asked her the message she had for others who were interested in going into the profession, whether it's singing, acting, being a part of the entertainment industry, if you will. How thick does your skin need to be? I'm obsessed by that concept of dealing with rejection, you say. Because you've lost a few jobs now?
I've lost 92% of them. Over the course of time. I mean, over the course of many years.
And
right
you keep
now,
plugging because?
Well, I keep plugging because I got through some of the harder times. It's like anything in life. You've got to take step by step by step. And so you get to the next area, all of a sudden you get in every job you go in for. And you're like, all right, hey, now I've gotten this. Let me go to this next level. And then you get to the next level and all of a sudden you can't get a job for a year. So there are challenges every step of the way. The thing I would say about acting is that there are two different kinds of people who want to get into the world of acting. There are the people who think that they want to be a big star and they want to become, a face on television or in the movie theater. And they think that, I'm really attractive and I want to be a star. Yeah, they're going to last if they make it for maybe a year, maybe a year and a half. Me, I started out in my early 20s. When you were asking me what kind of art do I do, I was a theater person. I was someone who said, I want to, growing up at my age, our age, it was like De Niro. I grew up in Long Beach, Long Island. Right. And then when I was 15, I went to Fieldston in New York City and Riverdale in the Bronx. And my goal was always to have a career that lasted. Someone like Al Pacino or Robert De Niro or Robert Duvall. Those guys did not cut their teeth on a screen. They spent their time in the theater learning, growing, understanding what works in front of an audience. You get that, and you know, they say, Malcolm Gladwell says it takes 10,000 hours to become great at something. Well, you're not going to get that on screen, but you can get that in the rehearsal room. You can get that on stage, and that's how you have the
just
longevity.
remind me, before I let you out, was American Buffalo, was that one of the first things Al Pacino did?
Yeah, it was.
I don't know why I remember
And Duvall did it, and you know, Richard Durning did it. I mean, that's where you're born.
Like the best. Real quick, what can people expect? AMC series Turn Washington Spies, final season, what can they expect? So that you can give up.
I can tell you this. Spoiler alert, we actually do win the war. And we sorry.
Go ahead.
But we win but over the course of the first 3 seasons, which you can now see quite easily binge on Netflix, we now get to season 4, and we're seeing us actually at the darkest moment because Benedict Arnold has just turned on General Washington, and General Washington's going through some of the most challenging times. But we do eventually get to a time where we see Washington and the Continental Army prevail, as we know that we do. But what I didn't understand was I thought, hey, this is a war that we won. Hey, it wasn't that tough. But I didn't realize quite how hard it was. And I do believe that if we as Americans every day had a cognizant understanding of gratitude for what it was that won us this country to begin with, we would treat it with a little bit more dignity and a little bit more respect.
How fascinating is it you are playing Washington at a time when the American presidency is something so many people are trying to understand and what the role is, what it means to be president. It must be fascinating for you. We'll talk off air about that.
Sounds fun. Yeah.
It's been an honor to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much.
The best.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for having me on Talk.
We'll be right back right after this.
To watch more One-on-One with Steve Adubato, find us online and follow us on social media.
Bill Galea is the author of When I Go Home, an Alzheimer's caregiver story of love. Why'd you write this book?
Well, basically, I wrote it, Steve, because when I was visiting my mom in the nursing home, she had Alzheimer's disease. I started journaling because my mom was a very interesting, funny person, and I realized if I don't start writing stuff down, I'm going to lose it. So I started journaling, and eventually the journaling became a book. And the title of the book came from my mom. One night, she was being changed, getting ready for bed. Me and my sister were waiting out in the hall. She was talking to the aide, and during the conversation, she said, "When I go home." And when I heard that, I was like, oh my God, it was either that day or the next day. I said, that's the title for my book, because I think it sums up the hope and the frustration of what people with Alzheimer's and their loved ones deal with every day. Everybody wants to be home. We wanted that, nothing more than that for our mom, and we knew on some level we could never do it, so we always brought home to her.
It's interesting, we're here actually at the Russ Berrie Making a Difference Awards, and the event just concluded, and everyone here is trying to make a difference, and in fact, that is why you wrote this book, to make a difference.
Yes, I actually had the luck of being able to spend a lot of time with my mother. I do a little bit of work as a consultant on the side. I literally, in a little over 8 years, I spent over 6,000 hours of visiting time with my mom, not including commuting time, actually being with her. So I think I'm a thought leader on the emotional aspects of the disease and how to really communicate effectively and with a lot of compassion and patience with someone who has Alzheimer's disease.
And the message you want to give to everyone else who's dealing with a family member with Alzheimer's is?
You have to be very patient. You have to be very compassionate. And basically, it's, you put yourself in their shoes. I know that if I had Alzheimer's disease, I would want someone to understand me and be patient with me and be as sensitive and loving as possible, as much as possible. And that's what I was able to give to my mom. And I owe her everything. She was the best person I ever met.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for your time.
To see more One-on-One with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at steveadubato.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato PhD and follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
We're pleased to be joined by Dr. Jody J. Foster, MD, MBA, also the author of The Schmuck in My Office and clinical professor of psychiatry at University of Pennsylvania. What a great title. A, where does the title come from? B, what are you trying to accomplish here?
The title comes from the fact that probably 80 to 85% of the consults I get start with, Jody, I should have called you 10 years ago. I have a schmuck in my department. I have a jerk in my office. And people get so frustrated because they've waited to intervene. And by the time they call me, there's so much affect on top of the consult that that's what I get.
It's interesting. We had to check with our team, our folks at PBS, could we use that word? And they said, yes, you can use it. But clarify, is a schmuck a jerk and that's it?
Well, the literal Yiddish translation is something quite different.
I do know that.
Right.
I'm Italian, but I know that. The literal translation is what it is, but there are different types of schmucks, are there not? Go ahead.
So I've been doing this work with disruptive people in the office for quite some time.
When the air quotes come.
And what I've learned is that barring major mental or physical illness, all of these anecdotes, all of these situations related to interpersonal conflict fall into the same 10 buckets over and over and over again. And I'm not saying they fall cleanly into the 10 buckets. Such as, so I renamed these buckets from their psychiatric terminology to make it extra clear that I don't think these people are psychiatrically ill or compromised. These are just traits. So narcissus, which is relatively self-explanatory.
So, okay, someone in the office, okay, you're dealing with a particular problem in the office. You go to a colleague, or the colleague's aware of it. Or is what you're talking about, doctor, that the colleague comes to you and says, let me tell you about my situation. Let me tell you how I dealt with that. Oh, you think you have it bad, I have it worse. Am I oversimplifying it?
You mean for the narcissist character?
Everything's about them.
So yeah, I mean, the basic premise is that they're incredibly entitled, they're incredibly self-centered, they have an incredibly limited ability to empathize or see a situation from another person's viewpoint. They tend to have a my way or the highway attitude, and they tend to require constant praise to fan their ego.
Could some of these people ever be elected to high office in this country?
It's possible.
It is possible, though.
Well, what happens is that because this character can be exceedingly charismatic, that in fact they often get promoted or over-promoted.
Or become CEO?
Possibly, yes.
Now, that person, why is that person dangerous?
Well, the person is dangerous not only because often the thing that is making them so charismatic is sort of filled with air. What I like to say is that the narcissistic ego is actually very small. There's a dichotomy between the actual ego and then the ego that's presented to the world. And so it's almost like you take a peanut-sized ego and you drop it in a balloon, and then you blow that balloon up, and that's that person you're seeing. So the person's ego fills the room. And you know, you can't get a word in, they're so big. They fill the room with themselves. But the balloon analogy is a good one because balloons are inherently fragile and easy to pop, and they're right sized to that peanut again. So in a CEO situation, let's say a CEO has been very successful, but then they take the company public and it fails, that narcissistic injury, there's another air quote, sorry, is...
You get 3 a segment, go ahead.
That narcissistic injury is potentially dangerous for them because they might become so wounded and so depressed that you know, these are when you hear stories of CEOs who actually harm themselves.
That's right.
But by
because they can't imagine themselves, and I interrupt
exactly.
them. You know,
but by the same token, in having only their own perspective and only their own agenda at the forefront, it's not necessarily good for the company.
Another kind of schmuck is, did you say a bean counter?
Absolutely.
Why would a bean counter, someone... I mean, I have to make sure that we stay within budget. I'm very aware of those things. So am I a schmuck because of that?
No, it's a really good point. A lot of these characters that get into trouble, some of the basic premises are really important and really good. For example, you want to have a healthy core of narcissism.
Fiscal responsibility?
No, but you want to have a healthy core of narcissism so that you feel good enough about yourself to put yourself on television or whatever it is.
What are you trying to say?
But by the same token, the bean counter, I mean, it's great to be a detail person.
Yes.
It's great to be reliable. But when the underlying anxiety is, I have to control everything, to the extent of, I have to control the vicissitudes of life, and I then control your work, and I micromanage you, and I correct everything you do over and over and over again, and eventually I rip it up and do it myself because only I can do it right, that's a problem.
And that person wreaks chaos around him or her.
Yes.
What do most other people do, doctor, when they are experiencing, by the way, often people say, well, get away from that person. And how are you going to get away from the person? They're in the next cubicle. You report to that person. Not so easy.
To your prior point, a lot of these characters sometimes get over-promoted, and particularly the bean counter, because they are detail people. And so you might have a visionary CEO who says, I need a detail guy. And so they promote or woman, of course. And so they promote the bean counter to a management role, where they're just so stuck in the weeds that they really can't effectively do that.
So here's my question. How do most people in business and in life deal with this quote-unquote schmuck who is wreaking havoc around this person? Like, do we confront it right head on? Do we deal with it? Hey, listen, we need to talk. Or what do they do?
So that's a lot of the point of the book is that there is the intervention in the moment when something happens that's upsetting, and then there's the dealing with the person in an ongoing way. And if an upsetting or difficult event occurs, then yes, I absolutely advocate that you intervene early, you call out what you see when you see it, and that when you tell someone that what they did was upsetting to you.
For example, break it down a little bit. Concrete example.
Somebody screams at me in front of my peers in the office. That embarrasses me, that humiliates me, and it makes me feel anxious and less productive at work. I would want to be able to go back to that person and say, I understand that you were upset with me about X, Y, or Z, but the way that you conveyed it to me and the public nature in which you did it made it twice as upsetting, and it was making me feel very embarrassed around my peers.
So there's a place to do that.
Absolutely.
And by the way, I've made mistakes and have raised my voice and dealt with situations with an individual. There are others around. I knew it was a mistake. Just about everyone has called me on it. But what's the difference between that and a schmuck in your book, number one? And number two, more complicated question, what's the longer-term solution?
Well, so if people are telling you in the moment, you just yelled and it upset everyone, and you can self-correct, well, then I'd say you're not being a schmuck at all. I'd say you're someone who made a mistake and can correct that mistake.
What do most schmucks do?
But, the types of people who really upset others, particularly, let's take the narcissist example, and again, there's 10 of these, but narcissist comes up a lot. It's always somebody else's fault.
It's not me.
Right. It's, and there's absolutely no capacity to be on the other side of the equation and to see how what he or she did might have felt. And so a strategy, sometimes you have to say, well, imagine if I yelled at you in front of other people, and literally it's like taking someone's hand and walking them to the scenario, because they don't naturally go there. And the other thing about this, and the reason that intervention is so important, is because so many of us are just functioning the way we function. We're bringing our personalities to work with us, and they work in different, parts of the world. And we don't always know that we're upsetting other people. And so if you don't tell people, if you don't lay out the rules of engagement, people often are like, I didn't know that was a problem. And of course I'll stop.
The other one, Georgette, what was the other one you said? Is a fly trap? What, is that a type of schmuck?
So again, having named these all myself, yeah, it's a type. Creative. It's a type of one of my. And the reason I named this the fly trap is because this is a character that's very seductive and very appealing, and they suck you in, and eventually they spit you out. And so this is a character type that's really defined by overvaluing you, being really intense, making you feel great, putting you on a pedestal, and then. You'll find that there's this sticky push-pull to the relationship, and eventually it's going to cycle down. Because that's the nature of the personality. And it will flip on its side. Have you ever seen the movie Fatal Attraction? That's a very pathological example.
Glenn Close.
Correct. That's a very pathological example of what I would call a fly trap.
Extreme example. You're not always going to get the rabbit in the,
You're not always, but you'd be surprised how much of the sort of surrounding activity you do get in the office. And again, these are people who you find that you have to walk on eggshells around them because you're absolutely afraid you're going to set them off.
That's freakish. Well, before I let you go, best advice you have for people. By the way, go out and get the book, read it, find out more. Best advice for people dealing with it right now.
So, best advice.
I know the situation matters. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. No. There are some general principles. And one is that you really need to accept and internalize the fact that people don't wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to be a jerk in the office today. People don't set out to do this. It's not driven by malice. People are just being themselves. We all have personality traits. We all have texture. Otherwise, we'd all be beige and there'd be, nothing that differentiated us. And so understand that when something upsetting happens, first examine yourself. Is it my issue that I found this upsetting because the person next to me wasn't bothered by it at all? Or if something happened, before you kind of jump to something, say, why did it happen? What's the underlying dynamic or anxiety that made this person do this? And then most importantly, call it out early, be direct, be concise, don't dance around what you have to say, and make it better like that.
Final point I'll make here is people struggle with quote-unquote difficult conversations. These are difficult but absolutely necessary conversations, because without getting on a soapbox, I'll often say, what's the alternative?
Right.
Because you continue to live with that, you have no one to blame but yourself.
And I would argue that if you keep collecting little victories by having these conversations, you'll get more and more bravery to keep doing it, and you'll make your work life and general life much better.
Dr. Jody J. Foster, the author of The Schmuck in My Office, clinical professor of psychiatry at University of Pennsylvania. Powerful stuff. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was great.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the CAUCUS Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by Montclair State University, PSE&G, the New Jersey Education Association, Delta Dental of New Jersey, Choose New Jersey, the New Jersey Re-Entry Corporation, and by the law firm of Gibbons, P.C. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area. One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been produced in partnership with TriStar Studios.
New Jersey invented the light bulb. It keeps us well lit and monster-free. Today, New Jersey produces megawatt minds that power innovation. Choose New Jersey and enter a state of brilliance.